What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another awesome video. Today I am back in Five Nights TD2 and I have created the ultimate season 4 meta tier list for you guys that we are going to be checking out in this video. It has the best boosters, starters, and the high damage dealing units in the game. You guys are definitely want to stay to check out this video. But before we get right into it, I would really appreciate if you guys would like, subscribe, and join my Discord server down in the description below. I need people to join so I can create better videos. And yeah, with all that being said, let's get right into the video. Alright guys, here is my tier list. This tier list took about 3 weeks, so I really hope this helps you guys. As you can see, I have a couple of categories over here: the top 10 DPS units, the top 20 DPS units, the hybrid units, the starter units, the support, bytes, and beginner. And as you guys may notice, only the bytes and the beginner units are actually filled out, and that's because this top half over here, the units are actually going to be in order. The bottom half over here, they're in no really particular order, but I am going to be explaining stuff about these units and the bytes. Alright, starting off with the beginner units. These are units that are very easy to obtain, and they're very good for new players. So starting off with the Nightmare Balloon Boy, Withered Freddy, and the Paper Pals. These can all be found in the summons, and the Paper Pals are a very good starter. And these two units, the Nightmare Balloon Boy and the Withered Freddy, are very good mid to late game units. Alright, moving on to the Funtime Freddy and the Biddy Babs. These can be found in the Season 4 presents, which can be obtained from Endless. The Funtime Freddy is a 5% chance, and the Biddy Babs is about a 30% chance from the present. The Funtime Freddy is a kind of mid to late game unit, while the Biddy Babs is a starter. So I would really recommend getting these two units because they are very good for new players and they're very easy to obtain. Alright, for the Barbarian Boy, this unit is slightly harder to get than the others. You can find them in the medieval summons at a 1% chance, which is pretty tricky to get, but if you grind a couple of days, you can get them and you can find yourself a really good starter if you're a new player. Alright, now for the bytes. As I said before, these are not really in any particular order. So let me start with the Kaboom Byte. So with the Kaboom Byte, this byte is only good if your unit is a single attack type or a line attack type. For example, the Deadeye Freddy, you would want to use the Kaboom Byte for him. And any other unit you use the Kaboom Byte for isn't really going to be that good. For example, if you use it on an explosion unit, it's really no point because the Boom Byte's buff really is the explosion. For the Boss Train Byte, I would really not recommend using this because it's really not that worth it. You only get your damage buff on bosses, and why only get your damage buff on bosses when you can get it on all your units, like with the Reaper Byte and the Box Byte. Now the Reaper Byte does do critical damage, which makes it just slightly better than the Box Byte, but the Box Byte would be a really good alternative for your highest damage dealing units. Alright, now for the support units. As you can see, I have a bunch of units over here that I'm going to be placing into the tier list. So to start, the best support unit in the game goes to Overgrown Foxy. The reason this unit is so good is because not only does it supply the best damage buff in the game, but also it is a nature unit, which means that if you took damage, let's say you took three stocks, if you place Overgrown Foxy down, he will give you an extra stock. So, and this unit has 3 whole placements, meaning that you can get up to an extra 3 lives with this unit. And let's say if you have like a squad or something, you can get a total of 12 stocks, bro. That's actually crazy. Alright, next up is the Scarecrow Freddy, which is the second best booster in the game. I wouldn't recommend obviously using it over the Overgrown Foxy, but this unit is a pretty good replacement. Next up on the list is Funtime Foxy, and while she is definitely not the best booster unit, she is very good for beginner players. If you maybe open a Season 4 present, she's about a 20% chance to get, I believe, somewhere around there. She's very easy to obtain, and she is going to be a really good booster if you are a new player. Alright, last but definitely not least is the Fazcade unit. This is the best and only moneymaker unit in the game. You really don't need to use this unit for the game nights. Sometimes if the night's really hard and you're running low on cash, I would definitely use this unit. But this unit is usually for maybe endless and boss raids. Otherwise, you're probably not going to be using this unit much. Alright, now moving on to the starter unit. The number one starter in Five Nights TD2 goes to the Undead Chica. It's undisputedly the best starter in the game. This unit is so incredibly good, it can be considered a mid to late game unit because this unit spawns so many cupcakes. I mean, there's like about 50 cupcakes on the map and they all have about 400 health, which is absolutely like ridiculous. It's an insane unit, guys. This is the new best starter in the game. The thing is, this unit was not the best starter in the game like a week ago, but they buffed it and now this thing is the best starter in the game. You're gonna want to get this in your inventory. If you guys do want to obtain this unit, you guys can get it in the marketplace for only 100 souls. That's how I got mine. And yeah. Alright, moving on is the Nightmare Balloon Boy. This unit is very good, kind of like what I said before. This unit has a base DPS of 700, which is really good for a starter unit, but it just can't match up to Undead Chica. Undead Chica is undisputedly the best starter in the game. But if you don't have Undead Chica and you have Nightmare Balloon Boy, go ahead and use that as a great alternative. Alright, for the third best starter in the game, that is going to go to the Crying Child. And the reason the Crying Child is so good is because it has a slowing mechanic, which can really come useful when you're in the start of a game. And it can probably get you to a couple ways until you can place your mid-game units. Alright, now for the title Wailing Crying Child, the Barbarian Boy, and the Rockin' Bunny. These units are going to be used as maybe alternatives if you don't have these three units up here. They're not bad starters, but they're definitely not the starters that I would recommend using. Again, if you're a new player and you have Rockin' Bunny, definitely use Rockin' Bunny. Don't get me wrong, Rockin' Bunny is a good starter, but it just doesn't compare to Undead Chica, Nightmare Balloon Boy, and Crying Child. And Undead Chica is actually better than like all these starters combined, honestly. If you have Undead Chica, 100% use it. And yeah, that's the starters. Alright, now moving on to the hybrid units. Basically what a hybrid unit is it does two things at once. Let's say it attacks but it also maybe summons, or it attacks and it also does maybe a cooldown buff to a unit. And yeah, that's basically what a hybrid is. Alright, so there's actually only two hybrid units that I'm going to put on my list right now. And for the number one spot, I'm going to give it to the Starfire Princess. And the reason I give it to her, because she has a 1000 DPS, which is actually quite decent. And she also has a 30% slow to all enemies in the range. In addition to that, she does 50% damage buff to all light enemies in her range, which just makes her like an all well-rounded unit. Alright, for the next hybrid unit that I'm going to put on this list, this unit is actually not too far behind the Starfire Princess. That is going to go to the Spring Duo. And the reason this unit is so good, because not only does it have a DPS of 800, but it switches between two types of units. The Spring Bonnie doing 10% range and 10% cooldown buff, and the Fredbear, it does decrease the cooldown, but it gives units 25% damage and range buff. And yeah, this unit is overall really good and I would really use it. But if you have the Starfire Princess, I think I'd put the Starfire Princess just that much better than the Fredbear. Alright guys, this is the moment you guys have all been waiting for. I am now going to list the top 20 DPS units and rank the top 10 DPS units, and I'm going to explain all their stats and passives and why they're at the spot that they are. And if you stay at the end of the video, I am going to create the ultimate Five Nights TD team, so I want you guys to stay for that. Alright guys, this is going to be quite the rapid fire. At the number 20th spot, this is going to be the Cursed Gesture Spring Bonnie. This unit has a DPS of 2000, but the reason it's so low is because its passive is just, it's quite horrible. I'm not even going to explain it, it's really bad. Anyway, at the number 19 spot, this goes to the Circus Baby. And the reason this unit is better, even though it does have 1500 DPS, which is about 500 less than the Cursed Gesture Spring Bonnie, it does have passives that increase the damage of electricity units, meaning if you put it in a team of maybe all electricity units, this unit is going to be a lot more effective rather than the Cursed Gesture Spring Bonnie. In the number 18 spot, this is going to go to Thanatos. And the reason this unit is quite interesting is because you can actually buy you can actually upgrade this unit with skulls, which can be used by killing enemies, and you can get this unit's DPS to about 2,100, which is quite decent, putting it at the 18th spot. Alright, in the number 17 spot, it's going to go to Shark Withered Foxy, and this unit has a unique passive where every second enemy is in his range, his DPS gets buffed by 2%. That sounds pretty good, but it's really only good for killing bosses, and that's pretty much it. Alright, at the number 16 spot, I'm going to have to give that to Blossom Chica. She has a DPS of 1,900, and she places little thorn traps around the map, making her a pretty good unit. But just a little bit better than that is going to be the Scooped Michael unit, which also places traps and has a slightly less DPS of 1,800, but his traps actually stunned, making him just a little bit better. Alright, in the 14th spot, it's going to go to Lobit, because this unit has a DPS of about 1,800, and this unit's passive is like a malware effect that makes damage over time. Attacks last longer and do more damage, and it also stuns, making this unit a pretty good unit. Alright, next up in the 13th spot, I'm going to have to give it to Bear 5, and his DPS is actually really low at 1,400, but the reason he is really high is because if you spin his wheel, like a lot of times, he can have a damage buff to about 55%, a permanent damage buff, and it pushes his DPS to 2,300, which makes him an exceptional DPS unit. In the 12th spot, just a little bit better than Bear 5, that is going to be the Amalgam, and this unit has a DPS of 2,400 and places traps around the map, making him just that much better than Bear 5. At the 11th spot, I'm going to have to give that to Nightmare Fredbear, because although he does have a quite low DPS of 1,200, he is an exceptional booster, because he boosts his dark type units, so if you're using a dark type team, that can be really good. And he also slows units, and on top of that, about I think every 30 seconds, he can pretty much double his DPS to about 2,300, which is really exceptional, so that's why I put him in the 11th spot. Alright, now moving on to the top 10. For the 10 best DPS unit in the game, I'm going to have to give that to Deadeye Freddy, because he has a DPS of 2,500, and he is a line unit which does make him a little bit weaker, but against bosses, this unit is really good and has really high DPS. Alright, in the 9th spot, I'm going to have to give that to Hag Withered Chica, because this unit has a DPS of 2,700 and has a passive that does 50% wither on enemies for 3 seconds. Alright guys, so I had a silly mistake. I accidentally counted 18 units instead of 20 units. In my mind it was 20, but it was actually 18. So I changed it to top 18 and then top 9 here. That doesn't expect any of the unit stats. These units are still good. I just messed up my math. So what we're going to do now is rank the number 6 unit, the Dragon Endo 01, and the reason this is above Hag Withered Chica is because although his DPS is 2,300, 400 less than Hag Withered Chica, this unit has some insane burn abilities, and he actually buffs fire units that do burn as well, making this unit a lot better. Alright guys, we are now in the top 5, and I'm going to have to give that to War Machine Foxy. And the reason this unit is so good is that the damage actually starts at 2,000, so his base DPS is 2,000 when you max him up, and then when he attacks, he goes to 150% damage, which is about 2.5x% damage that he's doing. 2.5 multiply damage, and then he goes all the way down to 85%, which is about 1.85% of damage. Alright, that was kind of confusing, guys. I'm going to explain it to you. So this is his base DPS right here, 2,000, and then when he attacks, he actually goes to 150%, which is about 2.5x, and it's 5,000, and then each second he drops down all the way to about 85% damage, and 85% of 2,000 is about 1.85, which makes his DPS 3,700, which is an insane DPS. But the only drawback of this unit is that he actually is stunned for 3 seconds, and then he repeats the cycle. That is basically the only thing that's holding him back from being like one of the top 3 units in the game. Alright, just a little bit better than the War Machine Foxy. I'm gonna have to give that to a Nard with a DPS of 2300. It is a lot less than War Machine Foxy, but the reason this unit is so good is that he applies so many stun mechanics that it's just insanely good. And then if your team is like all mono electric, meaning basically an all electric team, this unit boosts their stats by tremendously, and it just makes your overall team better, and that's why this unit is such a good unit. Alright, at the number 3 spot, I'm going to have to give that to Valkyrie Chica. She has a DPS of 3000. There's not really much I have to say about this unit. This unit's really good, and I would recommend using it. Alright, at the number 2 spot, this is probably a surprise for most of you. This was actually a surprise for me. I'm going to put Blyden Endo Freddy at the number 2 spot, and I'm going to tell you guys why. Passive read. Alright, so this is where I've been getting all my stats, and as you guys can see, if you put it to level 60 and put the Vengeance enchant there, it says that is a total DPS of 2300, and that is with both units placed. And basically his ability reads, Blyden Endo Freddy will deal damage based on the enemy's current HP, ranging from 150% to 75% damage. So basically, if an enemy has 100 to 80% health, this unit will do 150% damage, which is pretty much enough to one-shot any unit. And if we go to the calculator over here, 2000 DPS, keep that in mind, 2300. If we times that by, let's see, where was I? I was getting a little messy here, guys. Let's see, 150%, which is about 2.5. So 2.5, and yeah, you get a total of 5,750 DPS. That is basically what he's doing all the time. That is the max amount of damage he's gonna bring, and the least amount of damage he's gonna bring is going to be 1.75. 4,000 DPS is gonna be his absolute least. So this just shows how crazy OP this unit is. I would recommend using him if you have him, and that's why I put him on top 2. Alright, for the final ranking of this video, this took so long. If you guys are here, bro, please subscribe, man. This took so freaking long. It's gonna be Astral Bonnie. This unit has a DPS of 3000, and its passives is absolutely insane. It easily beats any other unit in the game, and yeah, that's why I just put it number 1, man. He's the GOAT, man. That's what I'm gonna say. Astral Bonnie is the GOAT of Five Nights CD2. Alright guys, this is something extra I've decided to do for the video. I'm gonna build you guys the ultimate Five Nights CD2 team, and let's start with the support units. You only need about 1. You would use Overgrown Foxy. For the starters, you would use Undead Chica. For the hybrid units, you would want to use Starfire Princess. And now you can see you have 3 slots left, so there is a couple of things you can do. You could add another booster, or you can just go 3 more DPS units. I'm gonna go 1 DPS unit, 2 DPS unit, and then I already have this Starfire Princess over here, right? And I already have this booster over here, so that's pretty much 2 boosters already. So then I'm gonna go Val Chica. Here is your ultimate team, guys. Overgrown Foxy, Undead Chica, Starfire Princess, Astral Bonnie, Blyden Endo Freddy, and Valkyrie Chica. Alright guys, that is gonna do it for today's video. I actually have my friend over here. He just wanted to be in the video. But guys, that is the Five Nights CD2 meta tier list. I really hoped this helped. This video took a really long time, and I would really appreciate if you guys liked and subscribed. With all that being said, I'll see you in the next one, and peace out.